All right, everybody, it's Sunday, and you know that means Cutlass Day. Woo! Actually, it's not Sunday right now for me, obviously, because I'm working on this after hours. You can see it's getting dark outside. I'm down here on a Friday night. That's how it goes when you run a business. Get to work on your stuff just whenever you can. It's been a bit rainy today, off and on, and apparently, I guess by the time this video actually comes out on Sunday, we may have a tropical storm. Something like that just popped up. Saw something about it on the Weather Channel app this morning when I was looking at some things, and there we are. So let's figure out what we're going to do on this thing today. All right, so as always, ask you guys to click the thumbs up button on the video, give us a like, send us some kind of comment down in the, or leave us some kind of comment down in the comment section. I don't know, I don't really have much of a reason for leaving a comment this time. It's late, I'm not thinking a whole lot, but for those of you that are new, seems like there has been a whole bunch of new subscribers lately, which is awesome. Welcome to the channel. And if you're not subscribed, you know, you like seeing drag car builds and road race builds and some other shenanigans, which there's a chance by the end of this video there's some shenanigans going on in Bradenton. Don't know exactly what we're doing just yet, but I got to go pick up my mower that I won at the New England 900. They got it ready for me. And instead of them bringing it up, I decided to go down and get it. So yep, we're gonna do that. Don't know if that'll be in this video though, but if Cletus was in the thumbnail, obviously he's gonna be in the video. So I don't even know what's in the rest of this video at this point, but do I want to show that? Do I? Sneak peek, next video on Val Morris's Camaro. Looks a little different than it did in the last video, but that's one of our major builds we've got going on right now. And then the Hawaii Nova, we got to get back really full-time cranking on that one. We've been nitpicking at it here and there, and just got to get back on it, really put some good time in on that so we can get it ready for Sick Week next year as well. This thing, still waiting on a couple of motor parts to come back. We sent the pistons out to line to have a skirt coating, and I guess they've been really backed up. So those should be back this next week, and we can reassemble the engine and drop that in, and then they're gonna go test it. And no, it's not a Leroy copy, for those of you that are new. And actually, now Leroy's got a body. I saw on Instagram that Leroy's got a body. Anyways, for those of you that are new, we do have merch available at winwithksr.com, as well as quite a few parts. We are dealers for all kinds of stuff because we are a full service shop here at KSR. So, you know, we can keep you supplied with parts for your hot rod, street rod, race car, daily driver. If you want a tuner for your daily driver, all kinds of stuff we can do for you. But anyways, since the last video, I did go ahead and make the other bar that was also a giant pain in the butt again, just like that one over there, and I fully welded them in. So those are now completed. I can actually take this bar out, and for today I'm looking at a couple of options. I've got the X that I've been wanting to do back in the back here, like another X. Yeah, so there's that. Or I may do, I may chop this firewall up and out some more because I have a new firewall for the car. But I've been wanting to go ahead and weld this and get rid of some of that ugly because I want to get the front suspension built for the car, or at least the front suspension mounts. So we have a TRZ coilover control arm mount for here. It replaces this. We're actually going to cut the outside of this frame bucket off because we need the clearance for the coilover shocks. Yeah, it's another one of them rule things. But I need to build, eventually there's going to be a hoop that actually ties in underneath this. It's going to curve into this bar and act as kind of like a skid plate. So if you can imagine this in its entirety gone, so it's going to get, first I'll cut it here and then I'll grind to get all of this weld all off everywhere, and then the front bucket of the control arm mounts to some tabs that will be on a piece of tubing. So you can just imagine a tube, probably end up at about this same height here if we pretend there's a tube here that's going that way through the car. So it's kind of similar to how the Mustang guys do a K-member, although with a G-body you gotta actually chop out the frame. But it gives us a ton more room to run a giant oil pan, at least between, you know, here and there. But I'm going to do a bar from here down to top of this frame here and weld all of that frame. Actually, that might be, that's my TRZ upper shock mount right there. And this one is a little bit different. I think they sell them in an unwelded form. They sell them welded, and they also, I think, maybe sell them unwelded. Because like almost everything else on my car, I'm gonna modify it to work exactly like I want it to. That might be one of my faults, but sometimes it's a good thing because I make things work in the way that I think would be best, even if it sometimes takes an extra effort to do so. Yeah, anyways, I better shut up and actually get to doing some work. Otherwise, I'm gonna be here talking and not getting anything done. And I gotta get up early tomorrow. I may have to re-angle the dehumidifier too. We're trying some stuff to help keep the shop drier, keep things from rusting less. So, trying a dehumidifier before we add another AC unit, but that's beside the point. Anyways, let's go. So you guys may have noticed that I welded the same area twice. There's a reason, and it's, some people may do it with their tube joints as well, but for this really thick stuff, I mean, these welds aren't terrible, but kind of like there's some inconsistency in the curve of the, you know, the puddles, and that's has a lot to do with my torch angle and stuff like that. This side, a little bit better consistency. And basically this side I've made 2 passes on, and that side I've made 1. I'll show you something that our new HTP welder does. And actually our old ones both do this as well, and it's a pulse feature. So go to DC, we're already on pulse. That's just where you're just controlling the heat with the pedal. In this mode, we are controlling the heat with the pedal, but there's also a pulse, and we've got tunability on that, which I'll show you in just a second. On this one, you can maybe see that it rolls over soft, like the sine wave. That's basically how aggressive the pulse is turning on and off. And then that one, double pulse, which apparently works really good on titanium. So we may try a little bit of that in our weld off that we're gonna have soon. See, that's one of those fun things we want to do, but we're just so busy with all the stuff in the shop and backed up by everybody that's wanting to get work done here. It's hard for me to justify taking a few hours to do that, especially when it's the whole shop doing it. We'll have to work that out. So, but anyways, double pulse we've used a little bit just playing around, but we're gonna go back to regular pulse, and then from here now we can tune. So this is how the main power ramps on, but if we go to the pulse mode, this is the pulse waves. So you think of 1 hertz 1 time per second, at least the way I understand it, and that seems about right, which you'll see in a second, real time. So that's our frequency of how often the power comes on and off. From there, we can adjust how long we are at maximum power. So if I play with the dial, you see that's 80%, 90%. So that would be like bap, and then it would go low power, bap, low power, etc., etc. I've been, for this particular job, I think it was at 30. Actually didn't pay much attention to it. And then our next step gives us the ability to tune the base voltage. So that would run cooler than if, you know, we barely stepped it off. But you would get deeper penetration with that, at least until the point where the metal got so hot it just dripped out. So we're gonna go back to where I set that on there, because basically what I'm doing here is really just for appearance. And once I've got the base filler in, there's not so much a need to add filler. Now I'll have filler ready just in case, because like maybe right here it could use a little bit more filler. I can just see by the way it looks that it might need a little bit more filler, but you can maybe see the difference. So down here I pulsed over it, and then this is where I was pulsing but with my foot, but it had no consistency to it. I mean, there's some consistency, but it's a whole lot more heat for a long time to get all of this, because I mean, this is what I started with, and you can see there's a cave up under there in some spots. So getting that hot enough to drop it in and get it kind of liquid and melt it all together, the first pass I do with my foot. So I'm gonna set this back up in the tripod, and you'll hear and be able to see the flash getting brighter. I don't have anybody here to run the camera. Otherwise we would put the screen, you know, the welding filter in front of it and set it up. And hopefully, like anybody with flash problems, like I know that's a thing with like bright flashes, there's about to be some. So I'll show you what the pulse feature does. Just something a little bit different that we kind of do, but I only do it on these, like this joint here where I'm just trying to pretty up the frame. Just trying to fix GM's bleh. I mean, not so bad. Even just grinding all the welding slag off that I did over here makes it look better. And then once we get that sandblasted and powder coated, it's gonna look real good. So here we go. Just gonna leave the camera running. And I'm already set up on something that'll work pretty good. Where's my glove? So keep my filler piece here, and you'll hear it in the beginning. It'll still ramp up slow. I've still got control of it with my foot as far as the max power, and I'm 250 amps when it's at max power, but then only 25 amps because I'm only 10% of that on the low side of the arc. And when I'm moving is on the low side. So big power makes a puddle, and then the arc drops back to, you know, 25, so I still have light that I can see what I'm doing. Move, 250 amps, 25 amps. 250 amps, 25 amps. All right, enough talking. Alright. You can still see I was maybe moving a little bit quick on that one. Actually, let's switch hands here. Alright, stopped at this slot here in the frame. So we still have kind of a stopping point, and you can see the old setup. And apparently it was on fire again. Maybe you saw that in the time lapse where it was on fire while I was welding that. You know, a little bit of excitement. Alright, so let's look at, get the back of the screen on so I can see what we're talking about. So you can see, hopefully that shows up in the GoPro. No, GoPros don't focus up close really well sometimes. It's a little sooty right through here where it was on fire. But you can see where I stopped right there, and the puddle goes from kind of being like a V, like the puddle has, you know, it's not as circular. So when I am welding, doing something like this, we're just turning this into a welding tutorial, aren't we? I'm going to draw on my aluminum. So if the TIG torch is straight up and down, which that's straight up and down, okay, let me get the camera right. So if the TIG torch is straight up and down, when you make an arc, the puddle is going to be a circle, right? If your TIG torch is at an angle, it's going to make a you know, some kind of really funny looking puddle, because you're blowing the heat down, and then as you move the center of the puddle, you know, if you keep doing those, that's what your puddles end up looking like. And that's kind of what I had going on there, especially when you get the stuff so hot and it's so liquid that it doesn't have time to cool off before you're moving again. And that's where you get those drags kind of in the puddles. And this is all just my opinion. I'm sure there's some welders out there that are going to watch this and be like, this guy's an idiot. Well, self-taught when it comes to the welding stuff. Had some really good mentors. So, and I won't name their names just because you guys might try to go throw them under the bus too. But this welding has always worked really good for me. I've had my welds inspected. I've had them cut in half to make sure I was getting good penetration as well as keeping them cool enough. So it's just me, how I'm doing it. So if we go back to, you know, the goal is always to try and keep the torch as straight up and down as possible on the joint, so we get that nice circular puddle. And then if that's our center point, when I come back, like when I'm pulsing, so that's where the arc is aiming, right there at that center point. So then what I'm going to do for the next puddle, if I want a nice tight row of dimes, I'll put the tip of the tungsten right there. So then it's, and then I put it right on, you know, it's hard to see it now because it's on top of that one. But if you see, we keep stacking these circles, and then that's how you get the stack of dimes, as they call it. If you want the big, the big wide puddles, you can put the arc right here on this. And so now you end up with, there's one puddle, and then there's another puddle, and then another puddle. And then you get a wider spacing on your dimes or quarters or whatever you want to call them. Stacking dimes, stacking quarters, stacking nickels, whatever. But that's the way I'm doing this. You would not necessarily want to do, at least I don't think, with thin tubing, because you're going back and adding another layer of heating to the thin tubing, or the thin tube. But for this stuff that is incredibly thick and incredibly strong, it just helps it be a little prettier. And yes, it's still warm. So that's enough jib jabbering for a while. I'm gonna finish this, and then I'm gonna trim out here a little more, and then we're gonna make some tubes that just go there to there. And that's just gonna help kind of tie this together better, make this whole area strong, because you probably can't tell it, but the frame will move a little bit. I don't know if I'm holding the camera steady enough to see that or not, because the camera's kind of moving as I'm picking the front bumper up and down. But if I triangulate that, and the reason it's doing that is because there's basically from here back, it's just in a single plane. You can see where we cut it up under there. So there's not a lot of strength left in the factory frame. Kind of the going theme for welding on this thing lately. And if you're wondering why, because people ask, it's just to meet rules for certain classes. The car still has stock style suspension, and it still has the stock frame. I know some of you may not think that that's right, and I've put so much time and effort into this, it would have been faster to cut it all out, but that's the way rule racing is. Now there's not too many classes that I need this full frame deal for now, especially the drag and drive stuff. A lot of them allow a complete back half, but I want to be able to run other classes outside of drag and drives. Whether or not I actually will, I guess we'll have to see. But right now I'm going to get back to work, because that was enough jibber jabbering that some of you may have already left. But I guess maybe some of you isn't the right word to use, because I'm talking to you, you're still here. Anyways, back to work. All right, well, for the final time lapse of this video, and it's turned out to be a decently long video, so hopefully you guys are still hanging out with us here. But I finished up the pulsing over the first weld that I demonstrated in the time lapse there. And then you may have caught, before I started grinding, I popped my Raycon earbuds in. And there are people that, you know, ask us or ask me in messages if we actually use the stuff that we show on the sponsored videos, and the answer is yes. Like, I've had really good luck with these Raycons. This isn't a paid video, but they work really good, and I laugh because I can put them in and mow my yard, or if I want to ignore everybody else in the shop, I can put them in and not hear anybody. So they have to actually come over and tap me on the shoulder to get my attention. So it's, you know, it might not be the most productive thing in the world for them to have to come over across the shop and break what they're doing. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point for what this video is. But these bars right here were not a super big challenge to fit, but they are unique in that you can't really do them in the tube notcher, because I'm working on the outside of the bend in that mid plate bar, and the tube does not stay round through the bend. So if we were to chop the tube in half, not in half really, but if we were to cut the tube right in the middle of the bend, we would see that the tube isn't round. Well, the tube notcher, because it uses a hole saw, or even the really nice end mill notchers that you might have seen Cletus has, and Cameron Johnson Race Cars has one of those, and a lot of, you know, more high-end chassis shops, they've got one, and I want to get one of those. But anyway, those all leave a round notch, like perfectly round notch. The end mill notchers more so than the hole saw notcher, but the hole saw notcher does a pretty darn good job. But what I basically did is I cut a notch to get me close, and then where there was a gap, I ground the other places where the tube was touching, so that it would, you know, you leave the area where there's a gap, you don't grind that part. But I take a marker and I draw on the tube where it's touching, and then I shave a little bit off of it. Now on the frame side, obviously that's just a really long angle cut, and I kind of initially just chucked the tube into the vise. Like, I have two pieces of aluminum that I pinch these tubes with so I don't like mar it up with the vise teeth, and I just got lucky where I eyeballed it. So
kind of it fit close enough for me to then touch it. And right at the very last little bit, I grind around like 3/4 of the flat where it lays on the frame, because the inner part of the frame is a little bit higher than the very outer part of the frame where there's the seam that I ended up going and welding earlier in the video. So that little, about 1/8 of an inch step down, once I got it close enough to see that the very tip of that bar was going to have a gap, I just ground everywhere else where it was touching, and it tucked down really nice, left me with, like, for the vast majority of things, basically no gap. And when I say basically no gap, like, the worst gap was like 20 thousandths in a couple of spots, and that's more than tight enough to weld these bars in without them being, you know, having a big enough gap that it's going to pull either the frame or pull on the mid plate tube there where I'm welding it all in. But, you know, we're about getting to wrap up on this thing, and the inside of the frame must have some kind of oily residue in it, because occasionally it would flame up and I could see it through some of the holes in the frame itself that it was on fire. So hopefully that does not cause problems later down the road with powder coating, because if they can't get in there to blast that junk out, when they heat it up for the powder coat, it may get liquidy and ooze out, and that would ruin the powder coat. So I'm gonna have to talk to him about that, but that video is a few videos down the road from now. So let's get this thing done and wrap this video up.
Well, that seems like as good of a place as any. Is that how the saying goes? I don't really know. But cleaned and welded the full joint, at least till down in there. I was a little worried that was going to get even uglier, and that may get a little more trimming done to it. We'll see. Got these pieces in there, and that should, oh yeah, no more flexing now. Urgh. Cool. So that kind of solved that problem, and it basically, you know, by the time we add the bar in up here and tie it down, of course this is also getting cut off, so there will be a tube member that goes around the front there, and then it'll get triangulated with here, and then where the motor plate is, there'll be a brace up to the top. More bars, but that's at least something. And when I take the firewall out, so I bought a firewall and the door jambs, so I'm probably going to cut this off right here to get rid of, you know, my extra rusty A-pillar there. Less than ideal, but this is my first car, so at least the A-pillars, roof, quarter panels, front fenders, front header panel, all that'll be parts that I drove to high school. Doesn't really mean much, but it's got some sentimental value, and maybe at some point my high school class will have a reunion or something, and I'll drive this car to my high school reunion. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, I've been out of high school coming up on 25 years now. Actually, this is 25 years, class of 99. Shoo! That doesn't seem possible. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for tonight, and possibly for this video. I guess if there's more, there's more. If there's not more, that means I'm doing a separate video of when I go pick up my mower. So this video, I think, especially with the welding, a little welding tutorial there in the middle. This might be a little bit of a long video, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, like showing people stuff that I've learned. Hopefully it helps somebody else. So thanks for watching, subscribing, following along. Leave me a comment down there in the bottom about something, and we'll talk to you down there. See you next time.